at this time. And Mr. Speaker, at this juncture, I'd like to recognize or give some time to my good friend from the state of Oregon, the chairman of the Energy and Commerce Committee, Mr. Greg Walden.
How much time?
4 minutes, sir.
The gentleman from Oregon is recognized for 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Speaker, to my colleague from Washington State, thank you for bringing this rule to the floor. Thank you for addressing this issue. It's literally one of great importance in my district and in the West. And I rise in strong support of the underlying bill, the Manage Our Wolves Act, because we need to clarify the management of wolves in Oregon and put us on a path to follow the locally state-written Oregon Wolf Plan. You know, for years, Mr. Speaker, ranchers across my district have watched as wolf packs have grown. They harass cattle herds and they kill livestock, and they are brutal. When you lose a heifer, you don't just lose one cow. You lost 10 years' worth of calves that will never be born and they'll never be able to be sold. Those that aren't killed are harassed, often losing weight and value. They're chased all over by the wolf packs. The cattle and sheep these ranchers raise are their livelihoods. Every day, sun, rain, snow, they raise and care for these animals. And when a first-time mom is struggling to feed a new calf, the rancher nurtures them, sometimes even literally bringing them into their own home next to the wood stove to warm them up and keep the calf alive in the winter. That care makes it all the harder to come upon a calf that has been torn apart by wolves. And if you're of young age or whatever, I would just give you a fair warning. This is a graphic picture of what happens when a wolf gets a hold of a calf. A rancher wrote me earlier this year that 3 of her calves were attacked, and she described the attackers, described them as, quote unquote, wild-eyed with terror after being mutilated by wolves. Just like this one you see here from a calf that was killed by wolves in Wallowa County, ripped apart. This rancher went on to write, "The rush of emotions one feels when you see an animal you have nurtured that's crying for help, panic in their eyes, searching for escape." She said no one wants to see that and described it as watching your worst horror movie in slow motion. Now, the ranchers have done a lot in this effort. They've watched as attacks continue, though, despite their efforts to implement largely ineffective, non-lethal control techniques they were asked to do. Meanwhile, the issue at the heart of this matter is there are arbitrary lines on a map that created a jurisdictional mess in my state of Oregon, where wolves in eastern Oregon are managed by the state, and right across this highway, they're managed by the federal government. Today's legislation that we'll consider fixes that by ensuring that all wolves in Oregon are removed from the federal endangered species list. This would then return the management to the state and allow wolves, like other wildlife, to be managed under collaboratively developed Oregon law. There are still challenges with state management, there's no doubt about that, and we've seen times when the Oregon Fish and Wildlife Service has been slow to take action and implement the hard-fought agreements in the wolf plan to help prevent predation and to control the wolf packs. State needs to step up and uphold these agreements, but those are issues we can work out as Oregonians. The last thing we need, however, is the federal government trying to micromanage wolves from thousands of miles away. This legislation that hopefully we are able to bring up because of this rule will get the federal government out of the way. It will simplify the jurisdiction and will place all wolves in Oregon under the state management plan. So I strongly urge my colleagues to join me in supporting the rule and the underlying legislation. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman from Oregon yields back the balance of his time. The gentleman from Washington reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.